So good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the unveiling of the Kittie Blakemore portrait. I'm very excited to see so many athletes in the library. We don't always get this. And artists, we've got all sorts of people. It's very exciting. Others will have the opportunity today to honor and talk about Kittie herself. And so what I would like to do is to tell you how we got here. So 2 years ago, our exhibits coordinator, Sally Brown, Sally, where are you? There she is, developed this very keen idea to infuse these historic reading rooms with portraits to showcase women of note. The seed grew into a multi-layered project, deep and wide impact. As Sally has written, first, we acknowledge and remember women who made great contributions. Next, it provides emerging artists who identify as women a stellar opportunity to showcase their talent and add this experience to their CVs. It's worth noting that while there are more women in art school today, far fewer women are represented in public art collections and museums than men. The project will also indirectly impact students who use this space to study. As they look up, they will see the portraits of prominent women who have contributed greatly to this university, and perhaps begin to see themselves in new roles or grow into thinking about who contributes to making the university a great institution, or the state an important contributor to the nation. Unveiling each portrait will be an exciting event, such as this, provoking more inquiry into this cause and the women highlighted in portraits. Moreover, having artwork by a woman, depicting a woman, highlighted in the portraits. Having art by a woman depicting a woman worthy of the West Virginia and Regional History Center collection is an important contribution as we continue to increase representation in our archives. So today we have a chance to highlight Kittie, the artist, Julia Zaph, who's with us here today, our library archives, some of which are on display over here, our library spaces, and to enhance the future of those who come to study. I'd like to also remind folks of the subject of the first portrait. This is actually a 3-year project. We are doing one portrait a year for 3 years. And so the first portrait in this project was completed last year, and that is hanging up here. And that is a portrait of Victorine Louis-Dahl Monroe by artist Anna Allen. Victorine was the first known Black female graduate student at WVU, and later became the first female Black faculty member at WVU. And I'm personally fond of her. She was also a librarian. And I also want to take this opportunity to highlight one more group, which is the Women of WVU supported this project with the 3-year grant. So if you could all just take a moment to thank the Women of WVU with me, I would appreciate that. So, and now let's get to Kittie. So I'd like to turn things over to Lori Hostetler, the director of our West Virginia and Regional History Center, to share some of what we know about Kittie from our archives. Absolutely.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's so wonderful to see everybody here, and my pleasure to get to speak with you today. I am Lori Hostetler. I'm the interim director of the West Virginia and Regional History Center, and we're the Special Collections and Archives part of the library. So we are actively collecting the history of the state and of WVU, and we make that available to everybody, not just to the people on the WVU campus, but to people from West Virginia and people from across the world. And so we have a small collection of papers to document Kittie, but they're really her professional papers. They were from her office, and they have fantastic information about the early days of the women's sports programs and the implementation of Title IX on the campus. They are mostly things like we would all have in our work files like memos and documents and records that we receive. And there's a small portion of it that were records that she created, meeting notes and things that she prepared before she met with administrators. But I'm going to share my screen, and as I talk and thinking about, I know there's people in the room, Kitty, and who can help us to add to what we know by sharing their personal memories. And I also encourage everyone here to think about what kind of West Virginia history they may have in their closets and attics and basements and around their house and in their possessions. So those are the kinds of things that we're interested in. We want to document the history and culture of West Virginia. So share my screen. So Kitty Blakemore, the mother of WVU women's sports. How do I get that? Oh. Well, interesting. All these problems with technology and Zoom, but basically this slide. So as I said, what we have in the archives are really about Kitty's professional life. But I was really interested in Kitty's not professional life, and we don't have things to document that. But I did some searching, and she was born and grew up in Manassas, Virginia, which was, famously the site of two major battles during the Civil War. We know that she attended Osborne High School, and I found this picture of Osborne by searching the internet. And we also found the address that she was living at when she attended James Madison University. It was at 518 Quarry Street in Manassas. And I tried to use Google Maps to trace that address back to see if I could find like a house or the street that she lived on. But I think the addresses have changed over time, and so I could not locate that. So after graduating from high school, she went to Madison College, now James Madison University, and this is her portrait, her senior year at JMU in 1950. At JMU, she earned a degree, a Bachelor's of Science in Education, and she was active. I was so tickled to find this yearbook and find these pictures of Kitty when she was young, because I had only seen sort of the same pictures of her much later in life. So I'm going to share just a few. If it seems like this is a JMU yearbook heavy part of the presentation, that's just because I think these are just really sweet. And if anybody has any clues about how to get this thing off of my, there we go, that's better. Okay, so this is a picture. If you can see Kitty, she's in the back row on the right. This is the who's who among the students in American colleges and universities photo. And then this is the 1950 women's hockey team. She's right in the middle. And I think this is a really sweet image. And then she's on the right in the front row at the basketball team. And this is her senior bio that was listed, and lots of sports activity while she was at JMU, obviously, dormitory sports leader, softball, extramural hockey, softball, the Mercury Club, which was a club for phys ed students, and even the Modern Dance Club, which I think I had read in some of the articles that she used to like to dance to the song Love Shack. And I'm thinking that, maybe as a Gen Xer, I could really appreciate that. And that, maybe that Modern Dance Club helped out with that. But after she graduated from JMU, she worked in public schools, first from 1950 to 1952 at Stratford Junior High in Arlington, Virginia. And this picture is actually from 1959, a little bit later than she was there, but just a side note that Stratford Junior High was the first school in Virginia to racially integrate in 1959. And then after being at Stratford, she went to Fort Meade High School in Florida and taught there. She was a phys ed teacher and a basketball coach, and was there from I didn't put that down, but 54, I believe, until she came to WVU. I had also read that while she was in Florida, learned to water ski and was an extra in an Esther Williams movie. And I think that's just really, she taught herself to water ski so that she could do that. She came to WVU in 1960. She was a physical education instructor. She started and also earned a master's degree in 1961. These two images, the one on the left is from 1961 and the one on the right is from 1962. And she was the advisor to the Dolphins Club, which was a swimming group club. And apparently the editor of the Monticola in 1961 had a pretty snarky sense of humor, but I felt compelled to read this quote in this description of the Dolphins Club. It says, Dolphins was established in 1936 to offer the student the opportunity to study the art of treading water from an academic standpoint. However, the 69 members of the Dolphins represent the heart of a struggling university attempting to stay afloat. But by 1962, that description had changed to that Dolphins was an opportunity for students to enjoy the sport together, and included synchronized swimming and diving and swimming methods and improving swim skill. So, but these are the earliest pictures that I could find of Kittie at WVU. From there, several years later, Kittie, as we've said a number of times, was with others, Martha Thorne and Dr. Lindsay Curry, really responsible for the implementation of Title IX at WVU. They knew it was going to happen. They could see that the law was going to be passed, and they were preparing for it. The documents said they're not easily visible on this screen, but they started collecting information from other institutions very early on. They have data from Fairmont State College that's on the screen, from the University of Kansas, and from the University of Illinois at Urbana. And then the document on the left is a outline for the discussion of intercollegiate program for women at WVU. And that document is part of our archive, and you can see some of these materials on the table. But they came into the discussion with Leland Bird, who was the athletics director, prepared and ready to answer all questions and make sure that that Title IX, which mandated that any university that received federal funding had to provide equal opportunity in all areas for women, and that included the areas of athletics. And so funding and scholarships and facilities and everything needed to be equal. And they were dogged and determined, kind of knowing that WVU was not going to be able to, as a land grant university, give up that federal funding. So they knew that they had it on their side, but they also knew that they were going to have to, push to make things happen. And so in 1991, WVU celebrated the Women's Centenary, 100 years of women at WVU, and they produced a small publication that was the history of women at WVU. And in that publication, they described Kittie as a recruiter, a prodder, and a saleswoman, not only for women's basketball, but for better athletic opportunities and college education for her ladies. So let's let Kittie talk for herself instead of me. This video is silent at the beginning for a few seconds, but it will kick in.
I knew I was going to be the first coach because Mrs. Thorne and I were the ones who started these programs. So there was no question about who the coaches were going to be. We were physical education teachers, and that was one reason we got the jobs, because they didn't have to pay us separately. We were already being paid by the School of Physical Education. It was exciting to be to get the program rolling. It had been a dream of mine for a long time to be a coach and to work at West Virginia University. The problem was, though, that I had to have tryouts. I had to have the tryouts, and I couldn't have any uniforms at first, because until you get some people, you don't have any sizes. So by the time I got the people and we ordered the uniforms, we didn't get them until the end of the season. What we wore, blue shorts that were the physical education uniform, gold t-shirts, and then we had pennies. We had blue pennies for away, gold pennies for home. I know that first year we didn't win many games, and it was always wonderful to win. These players, not many of them had ever played women's basketball before. So, you know, when we won, it was like winning the Super Bowl for them, even though it was the first game. It was a challenge to all of the coaches to try to do the best they could. And to get the best players that they could get. And I think that was one thing that really helped, was we got good players. They didn't have a lot of experience, but they were willing to learn. That's the thing with women. They don't mind to learn.
I love that quote, and I had to include this video because of that quote. Okay, so now we're in this era where Kittie is the head coach for 19 years, and then later becomes first senior woman administrator in athletics for the last 5 years of her career. The picture that you're seeing here is the first basketball team, and they played their first game against West Liberty College in January of 1974, and they won. And her statistics speak for themselves. Got to admit, I'm not a real sporty person. I'm a history person, and but I can appreciate it, and it's impressive. And it continues beyond those stats. She was recognized as a coach of the year, and she produced an All-American player and all conference players, including Georgianne Wells, who is pictured but kind of covered up by my head on the screen, but who is known for being the first woman to dunk a basketball in this college, in a women's college game. And then, she was, lauded even more as a teacher, 5 times outstanding teacher in the School of Physical Education, 1989 Touchdown Club Proficiency Award, WVU's Mary Catherine Buswell Award for service to women, and then 1993 the Celebrate Women Award, which is given by the West Virginia Women's Commission. And again, I'm back to that Women's Centenary in 1991. But part of that program was to create a time capsule. And Kittie submitted a history of women's sports. It's called Varsity Sports for Women at University. And I don't think I'm spoiling the time capsule opening for anybody by sharing this. It did cross my mind, but I believe that they actually did open it in 2016 on the 25th anniversary of this 125th anniversary of Women at WVU, and then reburied it with more materials in it. But I know you can't see that on the screen. So she notes in her piece that women are now a part of the championship rifle team. Men and women train together, swimming and diving, the same coaches. Equal facilities are a must, and practice times are worked out to benefit men and women. The university and athletic department have kept pace with the times. When this capsule is open, I hope sports have been added. And then at the end, she says, sports for women are fast growing, and I think they are here to stay. So, I just thought this was a really neat thing from her perspective in 1991, about how far they had come. So Kittie's legacy for Title IX is summed up wonderfully in this video that was produced by WVU. So it's a shorter video this time, but I want to share that with everybody.
It had been a dream of mine for a long time to be a coach and to work at West Virginia University.
You know, there's been people that have done something special before you, and it's now a privilege to be part of it, put the jersey on, and just make sure that you're continuing the tradition, and that's to be the best.
And Ginny Thrasher is the gold medalist.
The 2016 Women's Herman Trophy is from West Virginia University, Kadisha.
A conference tournament title will travel country roads.
West Virginia making their first ever NCAA appearance.
Is the most prolific distance runner in West Virginia women's history.
Their fourth Big 12 championship title in the last 6 years.
After she perfected one sport, she went to another and conquered that sport as well.
Rosemary Kasori could do it all.
She is the first ever female track and field national champion.
West Virginia, the most decorated program in the sport.
West Virginia is headed to the College Cup.
George Ann Wells, the first woman to dunk a basketball in a college game.
They're just doing marvelous things that nobody thought they'd ever be able to do.
Kittie certainly has a Title IX legacy at WVU, but I think that her real legacy is one of love. And after she passed, so many people left beautiful tributes online, and I just took little excerpts from not even all of them, just for a few. I don't know how many you all can read. I won't all, but it's the same story over and over. After our playing days were over, Coach was always there for us. She was more than a boss. She was my friend, my confidant, someone who took the time to be there for anyone who needed her, and she was like family to me. She taught us more than the subject matter in a classroom or a skill on the basketball court. She taught us about life right and wrong, about respect, about integrity, about loyalty, and most importantly, she taught us how to work out our obstacles in life and depend upon ourselves. When I sustained a knee injury which resulted in surgery, Coach came to the hospital to be with me. She doted over me just like my mother would and put a cold cloth on my forehead when I became sick from anesthesia. I am a better person for having known her. She made the world a better place by the way she lived her life. And I really love this last one. Kittie Blakemore had many awards and recognitions. However, what is most important is how she made people feel. Thomas Roosevelt stated, "People don't care how much you know until they know how much you care." This quote sums it all up. And I just found these to be so beautiful. And I found myself really wishing that I would have known Kittie Blakemore. But I'm proud to be a part of this program and to be part of the library that wants to preserve her memory. And so I thank you all for your time today. I wanted to give a shout out to Catherine Nikowski, who is an administrative associate at the center, who has put together this lovely display of materials about Kittie and women's athletics at WVU. She did a fantastic job. I also want to shout out to John Antonick for all the research that he has done over the years, and just say how helpful and wonderful having that available was as I was researching for this program. I said at the beginning of my talk about we're collecting oral histories, and I just wanted to mention that again. I'm going to be around for a while, and I have my card, and I encourage everyone, because they might have something to contribute, to come up and connect, and I want to keep in touch with you. And I've been working for 5 years on a project called the West Virginia Feminist Activist Collection, and there's some materials on display over here from that, and there's an intersection between this Kittie project and that project as well. And I just have to continue to say that I'm constantly in admiration and awe of the women that I have the privilege to document as part of my job, and Kittie is a #1 example of that. So Thank you all so much. I'm going to turn it over to Julia, our artist.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So,
I jumped ahead.
yeah, actually, before Julia gives a presentation, we're going to do our actual unveiling. So Sally Brown, our exhibits coordinator, and Julia, the artist, now present the portrait. Wow. And now Julia will come and tell us about her process in creating this.
Hello, everybody. You can see the painting is right here. I'm so glad everybody came out to see my piece. Put a lot of work into this piece, and just like all of the comments that were just on the screen a minute ago, I wanted to highlight a comment that I had saw about how Kittie was known as, she was the mom, she was the mother of Mountaineers. And in so many things that I read about who she was as a person, so many people's recollections of their conversations with her and what good advice she gave and how she looked at you like she really connected to your spirit. And I just think that that's amazing. And I really wanted to try to capture that with this piece. I think the biggest thing I wanted to focus on was the gaze that she gives, because so many of the comments talked about like her gaze and how strong it was. And that's what I tried to highlight with this. And then I also wanted to point out with this one, her little kitty pin. The picture I based this painting off of was taken, I think, in '73 when she started. And it was just a photograph that was taken of her. And she had that pin. And originally, I couldn't find any color photos of her from this time period. Had to search all over the place to try to find pictures. Turns out my middle school softball coach was actually also one of her players. So I got some photos from her. So shout out to Lynn, really appreciate that. But I'm so happy that I was able to finally add some color to the photo and just kind of bring a little love back to this image of her. And I also made a video of my process. So I wanted to go ahead and show that to everybody here. Alrighty. So I also made a couple other videos that are posted before this about the process of how I prepped my canvas for this piece. I'm an oil portrait artist that normally works on wood. And this time I was working on canvas, and I wanted to try to get a really smooth surface. Oh, sorry about that. Wanted to try to get a really smooth surface to paint on. So I did a process of adding probably like 30 layers of gesso to the canvas, and then wet sanding it down to try to make it as smooth as it possibly could be. And it turned out being as smooth as paper. Like you could go up and feel it, and you can kind of tell when you look at the piece in person, but it's has an extremely smooth texture. And so the process that I'm doing now, this is the underpainting of the piece. I basically just go in and add little bits of color, and then use my other paintbrushes to kind of scribble the color into each other and sort of blend it all together. I'm going to speed this up a little bit just because this video is quite long. This video is available on my YouTube, by the way. You guys can go check it out if you want to see the full painting. But this is after I added in some of the background. It's a little bit easier to see the piece coming together. Right there for a moment, I showed my palette that I was working on. I had thrifted like an old picture frame with glass from Goodwill, and I used that as my palette just because I felt like I was trying to represent an old spirit, so I wanted to try to find a piece to use as my palette that kind of had that old spirit in it. You can see I'm just going through and adding the layers and layers. The hair is my least favorite part, but I'm so happy about how this particular piece turned out, and she just has a radiance to her that I really wanted to show. I'll zoom ahead a little bit more just so you guys can see towards the end. Here's an up close part that I wanted to show. So a lot of this piece, particularly just because I've never painted someone of her age, is a lot of really, really tiny details and going over them and going over them and blending them and going over them. But, I like that I was able to include this small piece. This is the first time I've ever tried to record any of my painting processes, and I'm really happy that I could use her as my first person that I could try to, you know, show everybody. And then I'm gonna scoot ahead one more time just towards the end. Alrighty. So at the very end here is when I start adding in small layers of color after finally getting that full monochromatic base layer. I basically just add in little bits of color into the skin, the hair, and the pink shirt she was wearing. I heard that she had a love for pink and that she had a specific purse she always liked to use that was pink. At least that's what I read. So I thought that since I didn't know what color her shirt was, it might as well be pink. And then I should finish up a second. Yep, here we are. It's just the end. But I once again want to thank everybody for coming and seeing my piece. And I'm so thankful to have gotten to paint Kitty. I genuinely think she's such a oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Sorry about that. Didn't know that was gonna happen. Anyway, that's the prep of the canvas that I also have posted. But I really had such a good time painting Kitty, and I felt like I knew her from reading so much about her and really just paying. I mean, once you look at somebody so much, you feel more connected to her, and I'm so glad that I get to be part of her history here too at WVU. So thank you very much, guys.
Thank you so much, Julie. That's fascinating. And finally, we get to hear a little bit of first person about Kitty. And so we have a few special guests here today to talk about her and the relationship they actually had with. So I'm very happy to present our women's soccer coach, Nikki Izzo Brown. And then after Nikki will be Becky Franklin, who is an alumna of women's basketball program and who played for Kitty.
I got to stand on my toes a little bit here. I have to catch my breath as this portrait captures Kitty because she captures our hearts. So it's amazing. As everyone knows here, 28 years ago, you look back and look at your career and go, who really stands out as somebody that made it all happen? And it was Kitty Blakemore. I'd also like to recognize Veronica Hammersmith, who's here today, our former volleyball coach. So Veronica, as you all know, I was hired in kindergarten 28 years ago. But these trailblazers, so I wrote some words to describe Kitty. Kitty took a big risk on me. I was silly, I was young, I was naive, but what I was willing to do was listen. And Kitty was the best teacher. She taught me how to listen and love. And Kitty did it best. If I can live up to Kitty and be who she was to all of us in the room, then I've accomplished what I wanted out of my career here at WVU and as a women's soccer player. Now, I will say Kitty Blakemore had perfect hair, and you've captured that. Okay. I think if her hand came out, she'd have a piece of candy there because Kitty would always bring me in the office and go, now, Nikki, you got to go in. Ed Passalon was the athletic director and make sure he understands what you need. It has to be like a football player. I'd be like, okay, Kitty, quarterback. Ed, I need a goalkeeper, just like your quarterback. She'd be like, yeah, you got it. I think nowadays we are seeing women on TV. We are seeing shirts that fit. Like Kitty mentioned, and I know there's her alumni here. What Kitty and the starting mothers of women's sport had to do here, there's no words to describe it. the challenges they've had to have and what they've paved for me and my career, and then hopefully for the next gen, the next 50. I'm so thankful. I wish I had an opportunity to go back and to thank Kitty, and I'm going to thank you, Veronica, because you guys took me under your wing. You taught me how to be fierce, but also how to understand the process along the way, but never sit back. And that's what Kitty did. She never sat back. She perfect hair. Miss Nikki, I gotta go get my hair done. I'm like, when is it ever done? Right. So I jotted some things about Miss Kitty. Always took care of her mother. She was a caretaker. So when you guys hear that she was probably invited to every wedding, she was probably invited to every baptismal, she was probably informed of every birth, it's because she was the caretaker of this university. When they talk Mountain Mama, it's Kitty Blakemore. Okay. Trailblazer, have to be. Always gave the best hugs, and then that tap. You guys remember that tap? She gave that always. Kitty had the patience of a saint, but the bite of a dragon. And I don't know how she mastered it, but that was Kitty. I have more words of compassion, intelligence, negotiation skills that were just off the charts when it came to trying to figure out this women's soccer coach and how it was going to work. And she always made me feel that we were important, but not that important. and it was football, but it was your football, but not really, Nikki. So just be patient. I think about my career, and I think about the 18 championships and the national championship game. And my hope is, I know Kitty's always over my shoulder saying, this is why we brought you here. I believed in you and nobody else did. And I just hope I'm making her proud, and I continue this legacy of love, compassion. And then my hope is the next 50 years, they do it because they want to do it and not because they have to do it. So God bless you, Kitty. I love you. And thank you for having me.
Good afternoon. I'm Becky Franklin, a girl from Kentucky who grew up playing basketball with the boys because that's who would play with me. I played 2 years in high school as Title IX was getting started. I loved the game. I worked hard at it. My dad's job moved us to Pennsylvania, and before long, Coach Blakemore started coming to my games and eventually asked me to come play for WVU. It was an honor for me to continue my family tradition of being a Mountaineer, as my dad was a proud graduate of the class of 1950. Soon, I found myself in Morgantown playing for the very woman who started this great program here at West Virginia University. Coach Blakemore didn't have it easy when she began. She constantly completed for gym time at the Coliseum and then resorted to having practice at the field house. The mention of the uniforms, the first couple of games, this is what they wore. So I didn't have to wear one of these. I came a couple of years later, but some of my teammates, that's what they wore. But they were happy to wear them because they got to play the game. She had to build a team from girls who didn't know much about basketball. She never gave up on her vision for a successful women's basketball program at WVU or that young player from Laurel Highlands. My 4 years as a Lady Mountaineer were some of the proudest of my entire life. Being part of this incredible sisterhood for each other and love for the game has undoubtedly made my life special. Anyone who played for Coach Blakemore can agree that having her at the helm has undoubtedly made, anyone who played for Coach Blakemore can agree that having her at the helm was a special experience like no other. To think that we are all here today because of a woman from Manassas, Virginia, who rose to the occasion to become a pioneer in the world of women's sports and paved the way for us all is simply incredible. We are all more talented players for being coached by her, better people for having known her, and will go on with our lives with a piece of coach in our hearts because she touched them forever. It's an honor to be here today to pay tribute to our coach who meant so much to us. We will be forever in her debt for giving us the opportunities of a lifetime. What a legacy she built, and I'm so proud that we are all here today to celebrate this very special lady. I would be a little remiss to not introduce my teammates who were in the first couple of years of helping Coach Blakemore build this incredible program that you see today. So when I call your name, please stand. Jean Mushaw, who wore number 35. Mary Hennon, number 34. Carol Musso Biddington, number 20. And Dan Kiger, number 33. And I wore number 34. We love you, Coach. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you so much to everyone who participated today. I just love this history coming to today's life, to going back to history and bringing it all together. It's very exciting. I encourage you to please partake of some of our basketball cupcakes over in the corner and coffee. Have a chance to look at some of the archives that we have from Kittie's archive, and please enjoy chatting with each other. And thank you so much for coming today.